Hey everyone, Brandon Vining, founder of ProGro Agronomy. Do you want to learn how to increase the profit margin on every acre you plant without the need of a crop consultant? Well, when you invest the next 15 minutes with me, I'm going to show you exactly how to get this done. But before we get started, I think you should know what type of clients that we serve. So this is one of our clients, Cameron Erikson. Cameron says, "We really enjoyed working with Brandon and have greatly benefited from his knowledge and understanding of agronomy. He works hard to help us manage our crops. We've been very pleased with his consulting and will continue working with him in the future." Cameron farms with his dad and uncles in Rexburg, Idaho. Jared Cook is an agronomist in Burley and Rupert area, the Mini-Cassia area of Idaho, South Central. It says, "Brandon is a wealth of knowledge. His understanding of soils and plants is beyond impressive. Brandon is an agronomic leader, always in pursuit of the best outcomes for his clients. He has helped me on numerous occasions over the years. Keep it up, ProGro." Judd Parkinson farms with his dad in Ashton, Idaho. And it says, "Brandon has always gone above and beyond when it came to helping us with our yields and the consulting he did for us. He's very professional and very knowledgeable about anything in agriculture field. You will not be disappointed if you decide to use some of Brandon's services." And this is actually Judd's cousin, Jay. Jay farms with his dad on a foundation seed farm in Ellis, Idaho. It says, "Such a great crop consulting business. We've been able to depend on reliable information provided for our specific farm and our specific kinds of conditions. Brandon's a great person to work with and always has us in mind. I definitely recommend this business to anyone seeking to improve crop performance and marketability." So these are just a few of the clients that we serve with our full service agronomy business. And so who is ProGro Agronomy? ProGro Agronomy is the number one agronomy training and education company for American farmers today. So who is Brandon Vining, the founder of ProGro Agronomy? Been married for 21 years to my wife, Deidre. We have 4 beautiful kids and definitely keeps us busy nonstop. So ProGro Agronomy was founded by myself because after several years in the consulting business, I decided that the information that farmers are gathering is not the information that farmers are being told by consultants, whether they're private or work for the local fertilizer dealership, is not the story that farmers need to hear. So what does the term agronomist mean? Agronomist means an expert in soil and science management and crop production. They are concerned with health and well-being of crops used for food production, fuel, and land reclamation. I've spent the last 20 years solving the single greatest problems farmers face today. Farmers are bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars every year due to poor recommendations by their current crop consultant. And this is because of a major lack of education in agronomy. Not that farmers aren't brilliant individuals. It's just farmers are having a hard time knowing what question to ask somebody who's driven by sales so that they're not getting sold, a bill of goods, for a lack of a better term. So what does ProGro Agronomy do? It gives you access to a group of like-minded individuals like yourself. It also gives you association with members from across the United States that are farmers just like you trying to get ahead. It also gives you accountability in the fact that we want to change things. We want to do something different. ProGro Agronomy also requires action. It requires you not to be on dead center, not to be on the fence. If we're gonna do something, let's jump in and do it the right way. It also gives you proven results. I've been doing this for 20 years, and to be honest with you, it's something that's in my heart. And honestly, I grew up on a farm. I saw the struggles that go on every day. Really and truly, my goal is to help farmers just like you. So the method we follow is a proven science. I'm going to reveal some of the details to you in just a minute. First, I need to explain to you why it works so well, though. Stage one. Stage one of this process is how to read soil samples. You need to know what your plant's growing in, because as soon as you plant that seed, the plant is no longer mobile. In that 4 by 4 inch spot, or 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 inch spot, however you want to look at it, your plant is stuck there, and that's where it's got to be. So we need to know what's going on in the dirt so that we can get you the best ROI. Stage 2, understanding the disease cycle. If you're going to plant the host crop, the disease had better not be present, or we're going to spend a pile of money on fungicides just to control that disease. So know what you're planting, know what the diseases are, and where you're going to plant it. Stage 3 is understanding water management. You have to understand what water does to nutrients, as well as what it does to promote disease and insect damage as well. Stage 4 is understanding life cycles of insects so that you know when to spray, how much to spray. What time should I be scouting for spider mites in corn? What time should I be worried about, a specific understanding the life cycle of an insect so that you know when to spray and how much to spray. Well, you need to understand the life cycle of a corn borer if you're planting corn, especially if you're not planting triple stack corn or your neighbor's not got triple stack corn. You got to kind of know, hey, it's time for a moth flight, it's time to be spraying, etc. Mites in corn, the same thing. Why are we scouting for mites when it's 40 degrees outside in the spring? We're not typically because, depending on the geography you're in, they're really not present at that time. Stage 5, important facts your crop consultant isn't telling you. If you don't know what to ask, don't expect the crop consultant to tell you. It's their livelihood to know the ins and outs of agronomy, number one. But number two, knowledge is power. So give the knowledge to the growers. Let the growers have the upper hand on these conversations. That's what we're trying to do. So now it's time to reveal a few of the details. Stage 1, we talked about earlier, how to read a soil sample. So we've all seen thousands and thousands of pages like this delivered to us, but what are the key points that are on the sheet? What is it that we're looking for? The number one thing I look at personally is soil pH. Do you have either alkaline or acidic soils? There's only 2 types of soils in the world, right? You're either alkaline, especially if you're west of the Rockies where there's not a lot of rain, or you're acidic when you're on the east. You go east of the plains, pretty much acidic soil, which is dictated by aluminum in the soil as a dominating, cation in the soil. So you got to know what you're dealing with, right? Also, when you know if it's an alkaline or acidic soil, it also gives us, instantly what soil elements will be deficient as a result of tie-up, whether it's molybdenum and manganese in an acid soil or phosphorus and zinc in a alkaline soil. Most of the time, these soils are dictated by the geographic area in which you live and the amount of moisture that the area receives. Typically in the United States, the west is alkaline and the east is acidic, like I said earlier. Number 2 is the CEC. CEC, so what is the cation exchange capacity of the soil? This is a measure of how many cations can be retained on the surface of a soil particle. Negative charges on the soil surface help bind positively charged atoms to the soil, but they're not bound so tight that they can't be exchanged. So the CEC is a measure of how well the soil will exchange these positive charged cations on the soil to the next colloid that's next soil colloid that's next to it, right? For instance, in an alkaline soil, you may have a magnesium ion that's tied up to the soil surface, and it's possible to exchange that with another cation, for instance, a zinc, right? So it's the measure of the ability of how well your soil will pass ions back and forth. I also take note of the CEC. It's usually typically reported in percentages, right? And so that percentages will tell me how hard it is for an ion to be passed back and forth between the soil surface. The third thing I look at is percent lime. Most of the soil in the western U.S. is alkaline, so we have to pay attention to the percent lime. If you're in the east and you're in an acidic soil, it's a little bit different. But the percent lime is also there because it tells us what ion is dictated in the soil, right? If you've got a high magnesium soil, it's typically pretty sticky. If you have a high pH, calcium dominated soil, water will infiltrate, but it's just different ions dictate, infiltration rates, water holding capacity, the stickiness of the soil for sure. The higher the percentage, typically the more white colored an alkaline soil is as well, just because, percent lime is a measure of calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is like the inside of drywall, right? That's calcium carbonate. The fourth thing I look at is the nutrient values. Once I understand the soil structure and chemical makeup of the soil, I'll look at the individual nutrient values. I can have a pretty good idea of what is in excess, what is limiting. And, a lot of that's dictated by, the other things that we've already talked about as well. Can the soil pass a zinc back and forth, or is zinc your number one limiting ion that we need to take care of in order to maximize, production on that acre? I do review all of the nutrient levels, but really and truly, there's no need to spend a farmer's hard-earned cash if the crop does not require, a molybdenum or an iron type molecule, right? And so really and truly, we just have to be able to read that soil test so that we can get a pretty good idea of what's going on in the dirt, number one. But number two, where can we spend your hard-earned dollars the best so that, you can maximize yield? So why is it important? Why do you need to know how to read soil samples? Because once you put the seed in the ground, it's no longer mobile. Wherever you put it is where it's at. Stage 2 of this process is understanding the disease cycle. If you're going to plant a host crop, the disease had better not be present. So the disease triangle, I'm sure most of you have seen this before, but if there is no disease and there is no host, then really and truly it doesn't matter what the environment is, it's impossible to have a disease. Now, if you have a favorable environment, a wet, humid environment, for example, for Fusarium head blight in wheat, if we've got free moisture at flowering, the environment's good. Now, number two, if we don't have the host, if we don't have a wheat plant, we don't have to worry about Fusarium head blight. Now, odds are in a wheat growing area, we're probably going to have the host crop there. And the third thing is the pathogen. If the pathogen's in the air, we have a susceptible host and we have a favorable environment, guess what? We're going to get disease. Now, we don't know at what concentration we're going to get the disease, but the disease is always going to be present if you have all three of the parts of the disease triangle. Now, if you don't have one of those, it cannot infect. You know what? Every crop is different. Every crop we grow has certain diseases that they're susceptible to. If you know what crop you're planting, you should have a good idea of what diseases could potentially be a problem. If you do not plant the host crop, then the disease cycle is broken. I know this isn't possible all the time, but so for instance, if we don't plant corn in Iowa, do we have to worry about soybeans in Iowa? Do we have to worry about, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, any of those states? I mean, the I states, right? Even Nebraska. If we're going to plant soybeans, do we have to worry about sudden death syndrome? Right? If we don't plant the host crop, we don't have to worry about the disease. So know the crop you're going to plant, the disease potential before you plant, and don't plant susceptible crops into ideal disease environments. It's going to save you thousands in the long run. Why is this important? If you don't have one of the three things required for the disease, then it's not possible to have it. All three things, a host, an environment, and a pathogen, are all required in order to have a plant disease. Certain diseases attack specific plants, but if the environment's not favorable, the disease dies before it can cause much damage to the plant. For instance, it is impossible for wheat to be infected with Fusarium head blight if there is not moisture around when the plant is flowering. Therefore, management-wise, we are applying fungicides for the management of Fusarium head blight on wheat if the weather's hot and dry. We need to think about the environment, we need to think about the disease, and we have to understand the cycle of when infection occurs so that we know the best timing for application if we're going to use a fungicide, number one. Or number two, is there something we can do environmentally to stop the disease from infecting the crop? The third stage is understanding water management. You have to understand what water does to nutrients, diseases, and insects, all three. The single most important resource to current crop production is water. Without it, no crops will grow. It's impossible to grow a crop without water. The same is true for too much water. Right? Some farms have the ability to water whenever they want, while others take what Mother Nature will give them. Each of these influence the types of crops that are grown and the potential yields that are, possible per acre. But this also influences nutrient movement through the soil, as well as nutrient cycling, disease potential, and harmful insect populations. Good water management is the best disease and insect management there is out there. I know some of us can't control when and how much water we get, but when we get it, what happens to diseases and bugs, right? Typically when it rains, if it rains a lot or we get in a rainy pattern, what happens? Disease and bugs are always going to be worse. Water controls the ability of the soil to cycle nutrients as well. The soil is alive with microbes and bacteria that break down crop residue, chemical, nutrients, etc. into their smallest forms. These are then able to be consumed by plants. Without water, nutrient cycling is very slow. Plant yields suffer. With lots of water, we have the potential for leaching of nutrients and chemicals out of the crop root zone. Now, water is the single most important commodity on Earth. Why don't we treat it as such? The fourth stage is understanding the life cycles of insects so that you know when to spray and how much to spray, right? There's thousands and thousands of kinds of insects out there. You know, how many of them are good and how many of them are bad? Which ones affect which crops, right? If you know this, you know where to concentrate scouting efforts. You know where to concentrate spraying efforts. You know where to watch so that you can see if you have bug infection, that's happening. Now, we all plant corn, which is triple stack, which is supposed to help control certain insects, right? It's been bred into it that the insects don't affect it anymore. Like sawfly on wheat. If you plant a solid stem variety, the sawfly, it can infect the plant, but once the egg hatches, there's nothing for it to eat, and it can't move up and down the the stem of the plant. So therefore, really and truly, management wise, there's no reason to spray for sawfly because we're going to control it because that generation now doesn't have any eggs, right? There are hundreds of thousands of types of insects, some beneficial and some not. In order to manage for insects, you need to understand their individual life cycles. Most insects are hatched from an egg that's laid by an adult. Then they go through what's called a pupa stage, which is the adolescent stage as they're growing up. Then they become an adult, repeat the process. Some insects can complete this process, like aphids, in hours. Spider mites in hours, right? Others, it could take years, like wireworms. The click beetle comes out, lays an egg, right? The worm hatches. The worm lives in the soil for 2 or 3 years before it finds, before it can get to a host crop, before it actually can get to a stage where it in turn turns into an adult and could run around and lay eggs again. Right? Certain species of insects only live in specific geographic areas as well. In order to manage these, you need to understand every insect has its own life cycle. Without understanding this life cycle, how can you recommend what is the best way to control it? Do they live underground? Do they just overwinter in the ground? At what temperature do they hatch? Right? What are the host plants? Are they really hurting my crop? These are all questions we need to ask in order for us to better manage, the insects that we have on our farm. Have my current recommendations been killing all or some of the beneficials that could be helping me control some of these bugs? Right? All these are questions we should ask as we're making a recommendation. Insects that cause us headaches in crop production need a host and an environment, just like the disease triangle. If we do not plant a host crop, then how does the insect lay eggs, for the future generations? What would happen to European corn borer if we didn't plant any corn for 2 or 3 years? Right? It's fine if you do it on your farm, but is the neighbor going to do it on his? Because insects are mobile. They'll find a way to survive. Right? I understand this is never going to happen, but for crop management, think about what cultural practices we may be doing that are making insects thrive, on some of our current crops. And the fifth stage is important facts that your crop consultant isn't telling you. If you don't know what to ask, don't expect your crop consultant to tell you. Wouldn't it be nice to know the truth? I find it extremely ironic that we have complete trust in a crop advisor who works for a national brand, a Helena, a Simplot, a CPS, Winfield, whoever, right? But these guys are paid on commission. How is it that we're trusting a guy to tell us what to do on our farm when he's paid on commission to sell a certain product? Right? Whose interest are those guys serving? The one who's paying their wage or the one who they're supposed to be looking out for? Are they willing to align themselves with you as a grower over who is paying their wage? At ProGro Agronomy, we want to teach you the questions to ask your crop consultant so that you can become better educated, so you know what they know. So really and truly, right, who's looking out for your farm? You, the grower. You're the best steward there is. Did you know that national retail chains like Helen and CHS that supply crop protection products only recommend what they make the most money on? Have you ever wondered why a crop advisor shows up on your farm and one guy has RT3 Roundup and the next guy has Power Max? Right? It's because that's what they have the best deal on that was cooked up in the head shed. That's what they're going to make the most money on. Did you also know that you're only seeing the biased product listing from retailers because they're not allowed to sell every company's products? They're only allowed to sell the ones that they're going to make the most money on. Did you know that when the deal is cut in ivory tower that the retailers are only allowed to supply you one option? The one option that somebody in the corporate tower made the best deal on, whether it's RT3 or Roundup Power Max for our last example, right? You only get one of those options. Did you know that big ag chains are paid rebates from manufacturers for promoting products that are not required? I mean, how many times has a guy shown up on the farm and said, hey, do you need Roundup? It's time to spray your beans. Okay. Well, don't forget you got to add AMS, and don't forget you need to add a sticker, and oh, don't forget to add drift control. Before long, you're $4 or $5 an acre into, the retailer, and those are all high margin, high profit products for them, right? Did you know that local salespeople are incentivized to sell add-ons when they write recommendations? These are the guys that are supposed to be looking out for you. They're supposed to be your partner on the farm. It's time for a change. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone that is committed to your farm as much as you are? Our philosophy at ProGro Agronomy is this: we're in this together. If you, as a grower, do not succeed, then ProGro doesn't succeed either. We are partners with our growers, aligned side by side with one goal: to raise better crops and allow the grower to make more return on investment. So why is this so hard? Why does change make us all so uneasy? Change is a hard thing because we don't know what the outcome is going to be. What if it's better than what we ever thought? If you're tired of big ag winning, if you're tired of big ag making millions and millions of dollars while the American farmer is hopefully breaking even every year, then it's time for a change. It's time to start thinking about things differently. It's time to start doing stuff differently. So here's where I'm going to lead you. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about agronomy and break it down into the simplest principles so that going forward, you have an education and knowledge to make your agronomy decisions without paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for a private crop consultant or a crop consultant that works for a retailer that's here to sell you more products. If this sounds like something that sounds good to you, then fill out the application on the next page and schedule a call to speak directly with myself or a member of my team. So let's just review here. What does ProGro Agronomy gives you? It gives you access to myself and my team. It gives you association with other like-minded growers, farmers, ranchers, anybody that wants to learn about agronomy. Accountability, because we're going to ask you, have you done anything different? What have you changed? What have you not changed? Right? And action. You have to be able to do something different in order to make this thing work. Proven results, the results are going to be on your farm. You're going to be able to see them individually. You can tell me about them, but I'm probably not going to be, if you don't live within a couple hundred miles of me, I'm probably not going to be able to see them. ProGro Agronomy also will give you proven results. We've been doing this for 20 years. The process works. The growers that we help are happy. So what does this mean for you? It means you're never alone. There's an association of like-minded individuals that think just like you. I had a client one time tell me, he said, Brandon, my biggest asset is the fact that I live 3 hours from anybody. And I said, so what's your biggest liability? He said, the fact that I live 3 hours from anybody. Okay, this is training you can do online at any time. This is training you can do at your own pace. I understand that we all still have other jobs to do, right? But we also need to educate ourselves if we want to do things differently and we want to change. ProGro Agronomy will make you weaponized with training and education so that you're part of a weaponized community of doing things different. So if this sounds great to you, welcome home. Welcome to ProGro Agronomy. There's limited spots available, so fill out the application on the next page now if this is something that interests you. I hope this has been educational for you. Welcome home.